I hope you had fun and you learned more about Nuxt and Nuxt content if you never used that. And yeah, let's talk about the first problem. The first problem was that we implement a simple keyword search. And here we have the search component. The idea is if you change the search mode, that we will return the results that we get from the keyboard. And yeah, we also will do that for the other ones. Now let's look into the composable. Maybe let's start here from the bottom, because here what is important is that we use async data from Nuxt. And yeah, if you look into the type definition, really nice that Nuxt is giving us here directly the documentation. Then we can open that. And I think if you use Nuxt, this is important to understand, because Nuxt is used to do server-side rendering. So the idea is if we make this API call, we can do that on the server and we get then the full HTML back on the client. Here you define a key. This is also important because this key is also used for caching on the client. Then here, when we change the page, we can have a watcher. In our case, this would be indeed the search query. And then every time someone is changing the page, the watcher will be triggered and we make an API call. And as I said, if this runs on the client and is then in SPA mode, if the page is the same, we won't make a request against the real fake API, but we use the cache data. So this is nice. For us, this means we can use here the keyword search, and then we have our search query, which can be view or Nuxt or cat. And then we have this as an own cache. And then, yeah, we also have the watch against the search query. And then, as I said at the beginning, the special thing with Nuxt content is that it's using SQLite in the end. So if you build the project and you search for dump, you see that this is an SQLite database, which is both available on the client and on the backend. Then with query collection, as is part from Nuxt content, we are able to make SQLite kind of operations. So this is an abstraction on the SQLite. And also this will run against the SQLite database in the browser. And yeah, now is the question, for which keys do we want to search? We could say we only want to search for title. Here I said we will search for title, description, and text. And this means in the end, if you go to a blog post, we define it with Markdown. And the first part here is called front matter. So this is how you can add metadata. And then we search for the title and yeah, description or text. And yeah, that's how it works. There's only one problem. Okay, of course, yeah, in the end, we also map it here because my idea was the front-end components like base search result and base search result item. They need some specific data to display everything. So that's why we have here some mapping going on. But here, the only problem is, if you think about that, we don't search for the actual content. So if we make a query and I don't know, something is only under the body, we won't get a result back. Now here comes a bit the tricky part with Nuxt content. There's no attribute for the raw content here. What they have is an abstract syntax tree. You see it here. that they convert the markdown into this tree, an array of objects like h3 and so on. And we could use that, but then we need to make for each and so on. We need to filter it out. Another interesting way, which I found out, is that when we go to content config, we can add a raw body, and we can say it's of type string. So yeah, here we use the API from Zod. And now Nuxt is so nice, and it will also add the real content there as one string. Now, of course, we need to rerun everything and also always clean up before you rerun it. This can help. Typo. Now we rerun everything. And now every time you run npm run dev, Nuxt content will also generate a global type. Yeah, that's also important because we would get a type error if we would do something like this here, because block doesn't exist to type block. Because if you look into the content config, we say that our collection has the name block, and we tell Nuxt content where I can find our blog posts. So yeah, now we can include the raw body. So we also have to select for that. And then, of course, we will add it here. And now when we search for something, we will also get the result back from the body. And to show that this works, I will add that on the expert here. I will not put the description, but we will put the raw body. And then if we run everything, we go to our search with our nice shortcut. Yeah, you see here, this is not the description, this is the raw body. And now we are also able to search for the body. Yeah. Of course, this is maybe not the best UI to handle that because you don't know where this is, but for search, yeah, you can customize your search however you want. This is the beauty of Nuxt content. You can write down for which attributes you want to search. You can also customize your UI. And yeah, this was the first exercise. Important to understand, use async data from Nuxt and also the query collection, and that it's completely type safe. And we have here also other SQL-lite operations that we can do. And yeah, this was the first exercise. Then let's talk about the other exercise with the fuzzy search. This is the solution branch with fuzzy search. I need to just remove the changes that I did. So this is now the solution branch with fuzzy search. Now you see here we have used fuzzy search. We get a type error. The reason is you have to rebuild everything because we use Nuxt, and also there's no import for use fuzzy search because Nuxt is handling that for us, but only if we rebuild everything. So we have here to use fuzzy search, and I decided to use this library, which is also recommended the Nuxt content documentation, and they have a cool live demo. And the idea from fuzzy search is we have here an array of objects, title, author, doesn't matter. Then let's say I search for what should I search for? John, yeah. John, I search for John, I get John back as a first result. Then the cool thing with fuzzy search is, if I search for something that is not John, but it starts with J and then ends with that, we get it as a second result back. And if we just have a little typo, so we forgot the H, we even get that as a first result back. So under the hood, fuzzy search is using some fancy algorithm to calculate kind of how close different words are. Yeah, so, but lucky for us, we don't need to understand that. We can just use it. And that's why on use fuzzy search, here we have the same logic. We again use the async data. Then we use our query collection for our block. Then we select all the attributes that we are interested in. Then we have here computed. Yeah, we trim the query to remove all the white spaces. And of course, when the query is empty, yeah, we don't want to do anything. You could also think here, if you want to have some logic that the query needs to have more than 3 chars and so on. But yeah, here it's really simple. And now we use new views and give it all our blog posts back. We say here, these are the keys that are interested. So this is important for fuzzy.js because it will then only make the fuzzy search against these keys. And here you can define how high the threshold should be, how much the distance, and so on. Yeah, you can play with that. You can also read the fuzzy search documentation. And then we make the actual search request. And then fuzzy search is returning us an item that has all the properties in that. And here we then map that against the result that the front end needs. Yeah, maybe I can also quickly show you that. The idea is that from Nuxt content, we get a file back called block collection item. This here is generated from the config that we have here. So here we use sort, we define how the block looks. And this is then generated for us. So we have our title and so on. We have nice types. And also, since we say it's of type page, so this is related to Nuxt content, it also extends from a page collection type. And this basically means every time you have a page, you get description back, SEO, body, navigation, and so on. Here, as I was telling you before, the body is not a string, it's the abstract syntax tree. So they use here this markdown root type. And this is what every collection has that is of type page. So yeah, for us, in the end, I defined here our own file. I just called it types and under search. And you see we have here our search result, and the display search result is in the end all the data that the different view components need, like base search result. Here it gets a prop with the results, and then it's displaying everything that we need. So this is the idea. Of course, maybe there's also a better way to write that, but always the main idea, I think, is that this single source of truth is the block collection item. And then when you work with TypeScript and the component library, your UI components, maybe they don't need everything that is on a block collection item. That's why I'm often a fan of then using pick and so on, and try to have a dependency on the root type. Because then if someone is changing the content config and it's maybe removing reading time completely, then we should get a type error because maybe one view component also needs the reading time. This is the whole idea. And yeah, fuzzy search, we return that. And then we also say, if it's loading. And yeah, this was the fuzzy search part. So the only thing that we need to know is how to use fuzzy search, how to use views from fuzzy search. I think there are also other libraries out there that solve the same problem. And yeah, this was everything. And now maybe to the more complex exercise, or the most complex exercise was the semantic. So let's go to our solution branch. Need to clear everything, need to rerun it. And we go to search. Now we have keyword search, we have fuzzy search, and we have semantic search. Now, if you remember in my introduction, I told you about the script with the embeddings and so on. Now I need to quickly use Excalibur and explain to you one main idea of the whole embedding magic. So for us humans, when we think about a cat and a dog, maybe you think about TypeScript and JavaScript. For us humans, if I would ask you, is TypeScript similar with a cat, or is a dog similar to JavaScript? Because you are a developer, your brain knows, no, these two are similar, and these two are similar because, yeah, they're all animals, and these are programming languages. But now, how should a computer understand it? And there is the beauty of embeddings with the help of vector embeddings. So imagine we would have here 3D place. And let's imagine you could somehow group them together, that these elements are on the same vector space. So if we could do that, then there's a simple way called cosine similarity, where I was writing a blog post once on March. But the important thing is this nice interactivity. So let's say we could generate out of dog and types, out of dog and cat, a vector. Imagine this is our dog and this is our cat. Then they would show in the same direction. So they would be close together. And now with cosine similarity, which is a calculation, but you can read up this blog post if you want to understand the math that's going on. It tells us with one that they are in the same direction and they are similar, and with -1, which could maybe be TypeScript and cat, that they are complete opposite. Yeah. Now, the only tricky part is that we need something that tells us that TypeScript is a vector, just an example, that looks like this. And I don't know, then JavaScript would be a vector that it's similar, and then cat and dog would be different. So if we can convert words into a vector, then we can use cosine similarity, and then we can compare if some words are similar or not. Yeah, Because then in the end, what will happen in our UI is a user is typing something, he's searching for view. And then what is related to view TypeScript is definitely more related to view than, I don't know, cat. And then we, on the UI, we will convert this into a vector. Yeah, vector again. In theory, they have many, it's much more. It's, I don't know, 3,000, many more numbers, not only 2 or 3D. It's much higher. So we query for something, we have the vector, and then we do the same for TypeScript. And then when a user is searching for something, we can use our cousin similarity and know if they are similar or not. This is in the end what this script is doing. We use this model, we have texts, then we have our embeddings, and then what we can do, we can generate the score. And then we sort that, and then if I run the script, yeah, you know that that panda, what is a panda? Yeah, this text is more similar than the other text. So this is the whole idea. And one way to do that with Nuxt content is that we know that Nuxt content is generating a SQLite for us. So that's why I was first thinking the more stupid solution when you use Nuxt content would be that we would generate our own JSON file that would maybe look like this. We have a title, I don't know, we have a path, and we have a embedding for a blog post. So this is our cat blog post. Then the embedding is the vector in the end. And then we have this, and then the front end will get this as a JSON, and it will use the same model, and we can use cousin similarity, and then we understand if they are similar or not. But the cool thing with SQLite and Nuxt content is that we can just add something. So we already did this. If you were checking the Nuxt config, you saw that there is something called hooks. And for properties like reading time or last modified, we will add that in the SQLite, because reading time means how much time does it take for someone to read a blog post, like our cat blog post. You could, of course, write down the reading time yourself here, and I don't know, you calculate that, how much time it takes, but this is not optimal. We can just do it ourselves. So we get the whole markdown file, and then we get the body, and then we calculate the word count, and then we have the reading time. So this means when we run npm run build or npm run dev, we can hijack data into SQLite. You can always look how the SQLite database looks here, which is in the end generated. Now is the question that there's one other way to do that. There's also something called transformers from Nuxt content, but the idea is similar. We can also use that to add data. And this is why I was creating this embedding generator script. So we have this embedding generator script. And yeah, in the end, it's similar on how the simple script works. But now, of course, for the content, we get the cat blog post, for example. Then here, our script checks if a title or description exists, because we will generate an embedding only out of the title and description. And yeah, then we do some logic and so on. But in the end, we generate the vector embeddings out of that. And yeah, we also log some error. And then the SQLite dump has embeddings in it. And yeah, you see, this is, for example, one array. This is a vector, which we get from the transformer model, which kind of tells you the meaning of the title and description. It's also important that nobody can read that. Nobody understands how this works. Yeah. But with this embeddings and the models, we can use that to generate meaning out of content. And yeah, this then works good. There are only two problems. We also have the use semantic search composable. Forgot to tell you that. So the semantic search, we also need to convert the query when I search for view in the UI into a vector. And here, everything that we do here is running offline. So we don't make an API call to anything. We get the blog posts back. Now we also have the embeddings in it, which is important. And now, yeah, we generate the embedding out of the key. And now we use our helper, the cosine similarity, with some math magic. And then we can just sort it. Yeah. And then we return it. And yeah, this is how we can do semantic search with Nuxt, with SQLite, offline first. Yeah, this is the idea. There are only two problems with this solution. The first problem is that if you understand how JavaScript works, JavaScript itself, everything is running in one single thread. One single thread. So a user is doing something, then event loop will run, then here maybe we need to trigger our vector embedding and do brute force cosine similarity, which now we only have 4 blog posts, but imagine we would have much more blog posts. This could take time. And if everything runs in one thread, this could mean that a user is blocked to do anything else. Lucky for us, when we use browsers like Chrome or Safari, we have something called web workers. And now, in theory, we can say, here, please, web worker, do this work, because I know it is heavy compute and I don't want to block the main thread, yeah, because it's always important. This main thread should never be blocked, because a user should always be able to click around and do something. Yeah. And also, what I found out is, while I was searching for Nuxt worker module, is that Danny Rowe created a nice way how we can do that. So the idea is simple. When you use Nuxt and you install this module, under workers, yeah, you have a function and just say hi. And then in a component, you use await. Yeah, it's important that you use await, because every time you use a web worker, it will run in async mode. But here with this cool model, we abstracted it, because if you look up how to do web workers in JavaScript, it's a bit ugly, because you have to set up some code and so on. And this is how also not in this branch how I did it, but there is a branch called worker, where we have the worker. We have performed semantic search. Yeah, I need to rerun everything that the type is correct. It's under worker. Yeah, under workers, So if you install the model, you can create a new folder, call it workers, and every function here will be run in a web worker. And now we have better performance. So this is important. And then the other problem that we also have, and we should optimize, is that at the moment, we only use the title and the description to generate our vector embeddings. Vector embeddings. So, of course, a document like the pet blog post, it has much more information. It has also the body and so on. Now comes one other question when you generate semantic search into vector embeddings. How do you set up your chunking strategy? And there was one cool repo. We can see the demo. Yeah, sorry that it's on white mode. But the cool thing is here, the idea is here you can define how to set up the chunking. You could say for every 668 chars, we will do that for our body. Or you can also say we do this text splitter. And then if I copy paste my cat blog post, you see that now we chunk for different headlines, paragraphs, and so on. So it's more fine granular, which can improve everything. And if you are curious, you can then also check out the branch, how I did this with, how did I call it? I just called it better. So I changed the embedding generator. And now the embedding generator on this branch is using the abstract syntax tree that we get out of the box from Nuxt content. So what we will do is when we have a paragraph and so on, we group that. So this could be one chunk, this could be one chunk, and then we generate the embeddings. And then it's more fine granular. But of course, the trade-off is that the SQLite will grow because the Nuxt, the content config, now I changed that. So it's an array of embeddings with which all the paragraphs like headline and so on. But I played with that and I got much better results back when I was doing semantic search. Yeah. But yeah, since I'm running out a little bit of time, I would suggest you to check out this branch yourself, play with that, try to understand it. If you have questions, you can always reach out. And also, this whole topic is new for me, so I'm also not an expert in vector embeddings and so on, and chunking strategy. So if anyone has a better strategy, also let me know. Now, the last part is the hybrid search. Now, the idea of hybrid search is, I also have a cool interactive diagram that explains that. For my blog here. So the idea with hybrid search is that we have here now our fuzzy search. Now we have our semantic search. Now sometimes fuzzy search could give you a better result for something than semantic search. So if someone already knows the title of your blog post and he's searching for that, he wants to get that back. But maybe someone only is interested in a concept of your blog post, then semantic search would be better. So there is some formula that will merge both of these lists into one and will combine the best score from them. So if I do that, so the first run, of course, is it has everything that the fuzzy search has in it. Yeah. Then you see a score calculated. So on this result, the first item gets that as a score, and then the other one gets that as a score. And we will do the same for the other result. And then you see that the merged one is a bit different. So here, view composition API for semantic search and fuzzy search, it was both of rank 1. Then for fuzzy search, React hooks was second, but not for semantic search. For semantic search, it was view router, and for fuzzy, it was in place 3. That's why we generate this merged result. Now you wonder what is about this whites. So we could also say that semantic search is more important for us than fuzzy search. And now if we would run that, you see here the formula. We run that again. You see in the end that now view router basics, which was coming from semantic search, is higher than React hooks overview. And yeah, TypeScript generics guide was also fourth place. And the last place is Flexbox tutorial, which only did come back from fuzzy search. So the algorithm that it's called, there's also a good YouTube video about that. If you want to understand the algorithm behind this, you can look that up. But for us, we don't, we should understand it, but still I added this helper function for you. And the idea is, if you give it a list of items and a weight, that it will do the math. And this is in the end the important formula. They also have a constant 60. I think this is used that higher scores are not ranked so high, that also lower results get a chance. The only downside that I understood with this approach is that if this should work good, let's say you want to get the 10 best results back, you need to query also for 100 results on fuzzy and semantic that you can really get the best back. So the trade-off is that you make more requests. And yeah, we also will run fuzzy and semantic search at the same time. But as I understood that, this is kind of then combining the best of both worlds. Yeah, because sometimes if you search for something, you don't get that back on semantic search, and then you get it back for fuzzy search. Yeah. So now to wrap it up, I know if you never worked with Nuxt, the Nuxt content, then yeah, the third exercise would be too hard. There's also not so much information out there on the web on how we can do offline first embedding. There's much information out there if you want to use something like Open AI or cloud to do embeddings, but not if you want to use Transformer.js, which is really powerful. You can look that up. They also have other models. So there are many interesting ways that we can now really run AI models in the browser. Of course, the trade-off here is if you have not enough RAM or a computer that is 10 years old, then it would not work so good maybe, because what the browser is doing, also important to understand, it's loading the model. So the model that we use, I think, has 40 megabytes, but it's also not the best model. So there are also models that I don't know have 2 gigabytes, and who wants to load 2 gigabytes model first? on the browser before he does something. But yeah, it always depends. The advantage is that, yeah, it's secure because this data, when we search for something in our blog, everything is happening locally. Yeah, there's no API call. We have the model here. We have the SQLite database here, and everything works. Yeah. Yeah. I hope this was an interesting workshop. Of course, as I said, if you have any questions after that, feel free to reach out. You can clone the project, play with that. If you already have a blog, you can also implement some of the logic, improve your search, and yeah, I am done.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this lovely presentation and for explaining everything. We do have a few questions from the audience, so let's get started. The first one is, I would like to know if there is a best practice to write composables in Nuxt.
Yeah, there are many best practices. What is my biggest tip is to think about composable, also how you think about functions. And all the best practices that are for normal functions, that a function should only do one thing, it should not have too much options. You can apply it to composables. The only difference with composables is the reactivity. But yeah, my tip is try to only solve one problem. And also, if you know the view use project, I think it's good to check that out, clone it, and try to understand how they write composables. Yeah, because it's really one of the best libraries, and I kind of stolen many ideas from them. Yeah, that would be my tips.
Thank you. The next question is, could you recommend some good learning resources about LLMs and integrating AI tools in web apps?
Yeah, what I can recommend is the book The AI Engineer by Chip Huyen. This is really good. So he also talks about RAG, vector embeddings, anything. Also, one book that I can recommend is, I need to look it up, AI-powered search. It's from Manning Publications. They go really in deep how to improve search. And yeah, these are the two books. If you're more into, I don't know, YouTube and so on, then Andre Carpati. So if you search for his name on YouTube, he has many good YouTube videos. They go also 2 hours or 5 hours where he explains things. So. And also check out my blog, of course.
Of course. Thank you for all the recommendations. Next question is, why did you use useState in useShortcut, as shortcut isn't a global state? Can we just handle it using a Boolean ref in the header component?
Yeah, good question. I also must say, in preparation for my workshop, I was not working with Nuxt for the last 2 years or so. Because I was just using that. So maybe it's better to add it in the header. Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure.
Of course, people can try that out as well. Next question, are there any fallback mechanisms if the browser doesn't support the necessary features for Transformer.js?
Yeah, then if you still need semantic search, then the only option is that you also need to, when you use Nuxt, you could also have an API, and then your backend will run the model from Transformer.js. So it can run on Node, and it can also run on Chrome. And then it would not work on an offline first way. You would need to make a real API call. Yeah, this would be the fallback.
Thank you. Another person is asking, how does the semantic search handle updates to blog content? Is there a need to regenerate embeddings each time?
So in my approach, if I update my blog posts, I need to regenerate the vector embeddings because the content has changed. So this, of course, I think this approach works good if you have a blog and you don't have so many posts, but if you have a website that has, I don't know, thousands and millions of documents, what you would also do is you would use a vector database. You would also not do what I explained today. So my solution is good if you have a blog that has not so many blog posts. But then, of course, the more you have and you always need to rerun everything and you don't use a vector database, you just use a simple JSON, then you face some other issues. So always, if you scale with something, maybe you find performance problems and then you need to use vector embeddings, vector database and so on.
Perfect. And we have one last question for you. Can you integrate this semantic search with existing Nuxt modules like Nuxt content or internalization?
For Nuxt content, this is what I did today. I used Nuxt content and I created my own transformer script. For ILTN, just translation. In the end, you can also, if you have the translations, can also embed everything with your own little script.
Okay, cool. That was all the questions that we had for you today. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and, of course, for answering all the questions.
Yeah, welcome. See you.